organize the spring meeting at SACAC just for people to share.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for taking your time today to attend the Fall Georgia State meeting. We really want to thank you for joining us this morning because we know that no matter what side of the desk you're on, this is a busy time for us all. So thank you again for giving SACAC your time today. All right, we'll go over the agenda. So here's our agenda for the meeting. Today, we are going to begin with our guest speaker that will talk about current topics and trends in admission. Then we'll introduce each committee to give updates for their initiatives and their programs. We'll also highlight any state updates or programs towards the end of our meeting and open the floor for any announcements or comments before we wrap up. We know that this is blocked off for about an hour and a half. However, we hope to be done within that hour so you guys can have your day back. So first off, we want to introduce ourselves. My name is Alex Thackston. I'm the co-chair for the state and area initiatives in Georgia, and I'm an associate director of college counseling at Marist School. This is my 4th year on the high school side. Prior to working at Marist, I spent 10 years in college admission before switching sides of the desk. But I love enrollment management, I love admission, and I love the students that we serve. And I'm really excited to share more information with you all today about what's going on in our state and in our field. I also have my co-chair, Miss Ebony Lovett.
Hi everyone, I'm Ebony Lovett and I work at Wesleyan School in Peachtree Corners. I am one of 4 there. I'm going into my 4th year as well. I worked on both sides of the desk, doing some recruiting. I was part of GARN for a little bit as well. And so I'm just happy to be on this committee and to share with you today. So who is SACAC? SACAC supports and engages its collaborative network of enrollment and counseling professionals by promoting ethical responsibility, professional growth, access, advocacy, and outreach to all students to realize their post-secondary educational goals. SACAC is a regional affiliate of the National Association for College Admissions Counseling. It includes 9 states and the Caribbean. Our memberships run from September 1st to August 31st, and of course, it's $45. And the southern states that are included are Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And today is your Georgia State meeting. So here are our committees. Our committees are going to get a chance during this meeting to touch on some of the updates that they have and the programming that they're doing this year. You will hear from our committees after our guest speaker. But first, let's start with our guest speaker. Dr. Andy Borst is the inaugural Vice President for Enrollment Management at the University of Georgia. He is recognized as a national expert on college admissions and enrollment and is often cited in the Chronicle of Higher Education, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and other news outlets. Dr. Borst has 22 years of experience in higher education, with 14 years serving in a senior leadership role in enrollment management. He earned his PhD in 2011 and has worked in a variety of higher education settings, including 3 flagship universities, regional campuses, and a liberal arts college. He has experience leading university-wide initiatives to reform admission practices, working closely with faculty to shape admissions review criteria, and authoring UGA's recently published Strategic Enrollment Management Plan. Let's welcome Dr. Borst.
Thanks, Ebony. Good morning, everyone. I am going to share my screen and we can get going in topics. All right. So as Ebony said, I'm Andy Borst. I have been in Georgia for about 1.5 years now. I want to thank you all for welcoming me to this state. This is my first time living in the state, and it's been fantastic. UGA has been a great home for me and my family. I'm really excited about what's going on here and what we're going to be doing in the next few years. I thought that we would hit on these topics today, and I've planned for about 5 minutes. So 5 minutes on each topic, so 15 minutes total. I would encourage you to use the chat to ask questions. Something that I don't do very well is both monitor the chat and present. So I have asked Ebony to kind of keep an eye on the chat, and then we'll circle back to the questions that you may have when we get to the end of it. But my hope is to share a little bit about what's going on from a macro level in admissions and higher education, and then get out of your way and let you have the rest of your meeting. I was the admissions practices chair in the state of Illinois for IACAC for about 5 years. This was pre-consent decree, so I got to see what that's like, and it feels like being a part of this meeting. I've sat in for many years, but my first time here in Georgia. All right, so we'll get going on these topics. So FAFSA impact, population changes in SCOTUS. So I'll hit on each one and then we'll talk about questions here. All right, first up, FAFSA impact. As many of you are probably painfully aware of the challenges that happened this last year of the FAFSA delays, what we see happening at the federal level, even before the new administration comes in, is that I think that the federal student aid administration is really just trying to keep the patchwork together into the next year, but we could see some pretty significant changes for 2026. What we saw in enrollment trends because of the FAFSA delays is that several flagship or land-grant institutions saw their resident yield rate spike. I think students were gravitating more towards known factors, known institutions, more so that they have in the past. Some institutions in the Midwest were over by as much as 12 to 15% in their enrollment targets. That did not happen in the state of Georgia. I think most of the institutions were pretty on target with their enrollment. We announced yesterday that USG institutions were up about 6%. On the downside is that as students were flowing towards public institutions, they tend to have moved away from private institutions. Not all schools have reported what their fall enrollment was, but based off of a survey that came out earlier this week, there was some movement for fewer students enrolling in private institutions, and that was largely that may have been due to the delays that we saw in FAFSA. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics in our world, one of which may be that the percent of completers for FAFSA was up, which is true. The number of students that submitted to FAFSA and then completed the FAFSA did increase. In the state of Georgia, it went from 93% to 94%. However, in raw numbers of students that submitted FAFSA, that actually went down almost by 8,000 students. So you have 8,000 fewer students that actually completed the FAFSA, navigating a process that was supposed to be similar, simpler, more student-friendly, and would lead to better outcomes for students. In effect, there was a cooling out of fewer students that finished the process of completing the FAFSA. And then it's going to take some time before we really know what happened to those students. Did they decide to go to college anyway? Did they not go to college? Did they decide to go to a technical college? Did they decide to go right into the workforce? I don't know the answers to those things, but we can probably assume that the number of students submitting to FAFSA probably had an impact on what those decisions look like. It wasn't just Georgia. It happened all throughout the Southeast. It actually happened all throughout the United States, but anywhere from about, I would say, 8 to 15% fewer students across the United States by state were finishing the FAFSA and having completers. So that's the bad news. The good news is that several institutions are touting that saw their Pell numbers go up. And when you say percent Pell or we're very happy to see the number of students that received a Pell grant, a federal Pell grant at our institution go up. It's very easy for us to hear that number and think that who is on that campus changed. In effect, the calculation of the student aid index and who qualified for a federal Pell grant changed. So I wanted to show you what a chart looked like for a large public institution in the Southeast of by adjusted gross income last year to this year. And so this institution said our number of Pell students went up, which is true. But what happened is if you're in the 50,000 to 75,000 and even up to just under 100,000 in family income, before you may have gotten some Pell or no Pell. And then this year, there was a significant increase in the number of students who qualified for Pell. In effect, that was what the federal government was trying to do, is make it so that more students were qualifying for Pell. And you think about who is most likely to take out loans, it was those students in the middle income grouping that were given a Pell grant, at least some Pell grant. And then what we anticipate will happen is that reduced their amount of loans. So there is certainly a trade-off. Fewer students completed the FAFSA, more students received a Pell grant, and then were likely to reduce their loan aid. But we'll have to wait and track this over time. It's hard with just 1 year snapshot of what happened last year to what happened this year. Moving on to population changes. So we've all heard about the enrollment cliff that's coming. And we are at that final year. This is our peak year of the number of high school graduates in the state of Georgia, as well as in the Southeast. So this chart is all of the states that are in SACAC and what we anticipate for population changes. This is somewhat dated information because it comes from a gentleman called Nathan Graw, who coined the term enrollment cliff, but it doesn't take into account how many people have been moving to the state of Georgia. It estimates it, but we won't really know that until the next round of WICHE data comes out, which should happen later this year. And then we can go back and look at what were past projections and then what the actual numbers look like. And then when we talk about the enrollment cliff being a dire number, look at what happens from 24 to 25 to 26. So we know that there are going to be fewer high school graduates next year, but that number is still going to be higher than where we were at last year. But the problem is that trend will continue for the next 10 years, 5 years, and that we will go down in total to about 12% in that time frame. The vertical axis isn't to zero, so you can make these scales look as dramatic as you want. But we know that there's going to be fewer high school graduates from this point forward up until that 2030 mark. We'll see if that still is true once we see the new round of WICHE data. So we anticipate that there's going to be fewer high school graduates within the state of Georgia. It's not necessarily the same across states in SACAC. In fact, Louisiana is going to anticipate an increase in the next 5 years in the number of high school graduates. But we do anticipate that there will be fewer students in the state of Georgia. This is where I think there's a difference between estimates and actual. The fact that there's estimating 12% decrease in the number of high school graduates in the Atlanta metro area, I have to think that those numbers are going to be stronger based off of migration from the Midwest and the Northeast moving into Georgia, as well as California. So we know that it is not the same across all states, but we know that we have at least estimates to go off of by state. Not all demand is going to be equal depending on the type of institution. So the 3 lines that we're looking at, and this was what Nathan Graw's additional contribution was to our field, is that he created the Higher Education Demand Index. And he estimated how much students want to attend institutions that are in the top 50 of US News and World Report, knowing that that is a flawed system, but at least gives us an estimate of the type of institutions that we're talking about. That's the blue line. So if you're in the top 50 in US News and World Report, UGA is currently ranked 48th. So if you think of your mindset of who's in that grouping, that's who we are anticipating, and that those demand for those type of institutions will go down by about a little over 2,000 students. Then if you're in the next 50, they tend to be a little bit less selective, but still competitive institutions. If you are in the 50 to 100 in US News, the demand for those institutions is going to go down by about 3,000 students, but percentage-wise, it's a less significant of a drop. And then if you are outside of the top 100 in US News, that is where we see the biggest concern about drop in population and drop in demand for those institutions. So the question is, what are regional institutions and small liberal arts colleges that are not in a competitive market position going to do for their enrollment, knowing the population is likely going to decrease and there's likely to be less demand for that institution? So while we know that there are fewer native students to Georgia, we are fortunate that a lot of folks want to move to the state of Georgia, as well as coming from the Northeast, as well as the Midwest. This slide pains me to put up there, but it was the Wall Street Journal article highlighting the number of students that are coming from the Northeast and wanting to attend Georgia Tech. But not just Georgia Tech, it's institutions within the Southeast. So we have some data to know where students are coming from, and then the state that they're going to. We don't have as much institution specific. So the chart on the left shows that there are more students. These are where students from the Northeast are going to. They're going to the Midwest, primarily to Indiana and to Wisconsin. We know that they are going to California at a higher rate. So think of probably the UC schools. But the South has been the main beneficiary of students coming from the Northeast and going to institutions that are within the South, Mississippi, Atlanta, Tennessee being the highest number of those, especially relative to where the Midwest and the West is. So we know that there has been flow from the Northeast to the South. However, the Northeast is going to get hit hardest with the demographic cliff. So we don't know, we can't anticipate that these numbers will continue to flow from these areas outside of SACAC into institutions that are in SACAC. A gentleman named John Bockenstedt, who has a very active Twitter account as well as social media presence, also did his own analysis to show where those institutions, where students are coming from and where they're going to. And one of the conclusions that he drew is that while students are moving across state lines, they're tending to gravitate towards institutions that are identified as brand name institutions, which tends to be probably within the top 100 or 150 of US News rankings. All right, so last topic that I'm going to hit on is the SCOTUS decision. What do I mean by SCOTUS decision? The Students for Fair Admission group sued North Carolina and Harvard about their admissions process. And so I wanted to give you as much as I can share about where things currently stand, knowing that the SCOTUS decision eliminated the use of race as a factor in holistic admissions process. And my biggest beef with this is that the misnomer of a lot of the headlines said that race-based admissions was now eliminated. Y'all, we never did race-based admissions. There was no admissions process that defined that there was one process for students that was white and another process for students that was Black. Race was one of many factors that we were considered. So I take exception to any headline that says race-based admissions. I also disagree with the designation that it was eliminating affirmative action. It did not eliminate affirmative action. It only eliminated race as a factor in holistic college admissions. So affirmative action is still law of the land. It's just not for our particular part of the world. And what we saw happen throughout the summer and throughout the early spring is that Students for Fair Admissions put institutions on notice. In fact, sent letters directly to many institutions that said, we're watching to see what happens with your enrollment counts, particularly around diversity numbers. And if you see your diversity change significantly, we're going to assume that you are flouting the laws that was set forth in the Supreme Court decision, and that you can expect greater scrutiny for your enrollment counts. Something to highlight here is that the University of Georgia has entered into a consent decree 20 years ago that we as an institution have not been able to consider race as a factor in either admissions or financial aid. So no part of process at UGA changed, but there are institutions throughout SACAC that did change their admissions process. The question is going to be where those students eventually enroll. The lawsuits have already started relative to scholarships. So the Supreme Court decision also had nothing to do with limiting the use of race as a factor in scholarships. It did set forth a precedent that institutions cannot use a criteria where it can provide an advantage to a group of students either by sex or by race. For example, you can't have a program that is only for Black students. If a white student comes to the door, you can't turn them away. But you can have a program that is for African Americans as a way to be attracted to your institution, but it has to be open to anyone that might come in. The same would hold true for scholarships. If an institution has a scholarship that is limited by race as a factor or even by sex as a factor, this is the next target for Students for Fair Admission. They've already filed, it's not just Students for Fair Admission, but there have been groups that have already sued Indiana, Oklahoma, and Missouri about the having race as a factor in their scholarship process. There's a gentleman named James Murphy who works for Ed Reform Now, and he has been doing a fantastic job of tracking what's happened with student enrollments at highly selective institutions. And so it's mixed about what schools are reporting and what happened with their diversity, but MIT came out pretty quickly to show that their African American and Hispanic numbers dropped. And you could say that there is a trend, particularly among African American enrollments across institutions like what you see on this list here, where there were fewer students in their first year class from last year to this year. Same is true for Hispanic students. Now, at the same time, these schools were reporting less racial diversity, but more socioeconomic diversity. They saw more Pell Grant students. The question is, did they actually see more socioeconomic diversity, or did they show what I showed you earlier of more students qualified for Pell, therefore they saw their Pell Grants go up? So the chart on the right really is apples and oranges about who got a Pell Grant and did the demographics change socioeconomically, or was it just more students were eligible for Pell? Now, if you think about if highly selective institutions pivoted away from, in the past, considering race as a factor of admissions, to relying more on socioeconomic diversity, whether that be first gen, whether that be financial need of Pell, fee waiver, any sort of not proxy for race, but wanting to see as diverse as possible an incoming class. This is a chart of an institution that's in the southeastern part of the United States of overlap between who's a first gen student, who qualified for an application fee waiver, which tend to be low income on free and reduced lunch, and then who met the racial criteria for a BIPOC student. So Black, Indigenous, people of color classification. And so you see some overlap, but it's not an entirely overlapping concentric circle. Is that in the transition, in the strategy of relying on socioeconomic status, you can't assume that all Black students are low income or first gen. So the question will be, of the students that were maybe the third or fourth generation in their family, or Black students that are coming from high income backgrounds, that is likely who was no longer admitted into highly competitive institutions in the Northeast, other highly selective institutions. But where did those students go? I think it's a stretch to assume that those students didn't go to college, given the resources that they have at their disposal. It will be some time before we know for sure where they ended up. They may have ended up at competitive flagship institutions. They may have ended up at HBCUs, but we know that they're not at highly selective private institutions. Time will tell what enrollment looks like. We're probably just going to need more than just 1 year to discern what was the true impact of the SCOTUS decision on college admissions and enrollment. So my wrap-up questions, and we can, I would encourage you to think about follow-up questions that you have either about these topics, or I'm happy to chat about other things that are top of mind, is that will this year's FAFSA, knowing that we have earlier access to it in test phase, knowing that students are already going through it, knowing that we will get FAFSA information from the federal government sooner than what we have in the past, what can we take from what happened last year to anticipate what's going to happen this year? And how can we use what we learned to better inform students about what is a contributor and what does that mean? How do you help mixed status families to navigate this process? And then what can they anticipate for aid packages coming from the institutions that will probably happen sooner than last year, which is a pretty low bar, but hopefully before we run into the challenges of the May 1 deadline. It is too early to know what the impact of the SCOTUS decision is, but we'll have to see what enrollment trends look like, not just from last year to this year, but over time. What does enrollments look like at HBCUs? And then what will enrollments look like at flagship institutions? And then if you'll forgive the moniker of brand name institutions, if you have large public flagships that are building their strategy around growing enrollment because lots of students are interested in going there, from their in-state population as well as students coming from the Northeast and the Midwest, but we know that the population is going to be decreasing as institutions are sucking up all the air of enrollment. What is the enrollment strategy going to look like for regional institutions in the South, as well as small liberal arts colleges that may be admitting, say, 75 to 90% of their students and who may have a 70% discount rate? They will likely have to pivot one way or another or adjust to an alternative size. There are some experts out there that are saying that we can anticipate more closures. We may see some, but I think what is far more likely to happen is that institutions will shrink to their new market position rather than just closing entirely. That can be a very painful administrative process to go through. That's, not hiring faculty positions, that's letting go entire departments at some institutions. But I don't think that we can anticipate college closures at what has been estimated to happen. All right, with that, I will stop sharing slides and happy to answer any questions that you have or delve into other topics.
And feel free to please use the chat for any questions, or if you'd like to unmute your microphone to ask a question, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Or at the very least, I've given you some time to get to your coffee.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Borst. You offered a lot of really helpful information for us to understand what's going on in the realm of admission and enrollment management and the big picture. So thank you for offering that information and insight for us. We'll be happy to, if there are any questions that pop up along the way, we will forward them to you and get those contacts to you so you can respond. But thank you again so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your meeting. Have a good day.
Thank you. All right. So we'll go ahead and start covering our various committees throughout SACAC. Our first committee is the Admission Practices Committee. Unfortunately, the chair, Malika Lindsay, couldn't join us today, but I just wanted to cover some general information about it. So next slide. The Admission Practices Committee is responsible for educating members on NACAC's recommended best ethical and professional practices. They empower individuals to apply and advocate for ethical practices through educational tools and policy. They use the NACAC's Guide to Ethical Practices in College Admission to teach about confidentiality, truthfulness and transparency, admission dates and deadlines, and early decision, among other topics. So if you're ever wondering what exactly you need to do when it comes to procedures or protocols for higher education admission practices, this is the committee that can help, and you can reach out to Malika Lindsay for more information.
The Advancement Committee is chaired by Julia Hodge. She cannot be here today, but she asked that we share that we are in the beginning of securing sponsors for our next SACAC conference that will be held in Atlanta from March 30th to 31st, with pre-conference events occurring on Saturday, March 29th. Of course, the theme of this year is Embrace the Moment. So she had said if you have any questions about securing a sponsorship, you can reach out to her with her information on the screen. And this is information on the sponsorship levels and the different tiers of sponsorship that a company or a school can have.
All right, the Communications Committee is chaired by Celeste Suries Roselli and Dominique Harrison. Looks like they weren't able to join us today, so I will be covering their slide. So the roles of the Communication Committee is to connect SACAC members with information about programs and initiatives, to keep you all updated on issues relevant to admission professions, gather content for the Southern Scope, engage members on social media, and assist with website content and email communication. If you're interested in participating in these programs, please feel free to reach out to Celeste or Dominique. They'd be happy to take on any volunteer help that they can get. If you ever have any information that you want to share through Southern Scope, please feel free to reach out to them via their email, and you can find all of this information on the SACAC website.
The Finance Committee is chaired by Iris Martinez and Justine Phil. Iris will give us some updates about the Finance Committee, and Jackie Atchison, who chairs the Counselor Participation Fund, is here to share about that as well. So Iris.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I want to first start off by saying thank you so much for the invitation. I am actually home on maternity leave, and it was time to feed my daughter, so you probably hear her with her bottle. But I'm very happy to be here and share information about our finance committee and what we do. So again, my name is Iris Martinez, and alongside my colleague Justine, we chair the finance committee. We have two amazing opportunities to help our members get involved. The first one being CPF. And I'm not sure, I believe Jackie was on.
She's here, Iris.
Oh, hey. Yes, so she oversees the CPF fund, and it's essentially we provide funding for our members to participate in professional development opportunities with preference to those counselors that work in public high schools and CBOs. We have our first deadline coming up now on December 3rd, and this is for anyone interested in participating in the annual conference. Our second deadline will open up. The application for round 2 will open up later in the spring, and just stay tuned for that to happen. I do want to chime in a little bit about the Extend the Dream grant. And this really does enable our members to establish and pay for special projects in their communities that benefit students. We will have an informational webinar in February, so please stay tuned for that. The second round, going back real quick to CPF, the second round of applications is for those who are interested in participating in the summer professional development opportunities such as dry run, um, summer seminar, dry runs, and sweet tea. So again, if you need financial assistance, please feel free to, reach out. Happy to share more information about this. I really do hope that you all can consider taking advantage of these opportunities and also sharing them with your colleagues and friends. I'm not sure if Jackie wants to add anything.
I think you covered everything. Thanks, Iris.
Of course. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Iris and Jackie. Next up, we will talk about the Governance and Nominating Committee, which is chaired by Zaire Lionel and vice chaired by Christy Conley. We can go to the next slide. The Governance and Nominating Committee helps identify outstanding candidates who will lead SACAC into the future. SACAC is currently accepting nominations for president-elect and members of the board of directors. Additionally, the award nominations recognize and celebrate contributions of individuals within our organization who deserve public acknowledgement for their exceptional work in our field. The call for nominations and applications for president-elect, board of directors, and SACAC awards was sent via email last week. And the deadline to submit these applications and nominations will be in mid-January 2025. So please check out your email. And sorry about that. Please check your email for more information if you're interested in any of these positions or if you'd like to nominate anyone for an award.
The Government Relations Committee is comprised of many state chairs. The Georgia state chairs are Brian Cooper and Sandra Mason. I believe Brian is here today to share updates for the Georgia Legislative Day. Brian.
Hey, Ebony, I'm actually here.
Okay.
Awesome. Hey, Sandria.
Hi. Yes. So we will be having the Georgia Legislative Day on February 12th, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Georgia State University. We are still looking for volunteers to join our committee. So if you would please reach out to Brian or myself if you would like to serve. For those who did not hear last year, we did something that was brand new to Legislative Day in any of the SACAC states. We did invite students to be able to join us. So if you are a counselor and you have students who know that they're interested in public policy or international relations and they kind of want to dive into those things early, we ask that you please join us and bring your students so that we can have an amazing Georgia Legislative Day. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandria. All right, the Inclusion, Access, and Success Committee is chaired by Juan Acosta and Lucy Smith, and we are lucky to have Juan with us today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Juan Acosta from the Paideia School, and along with Lucy Smith from Charlotte Latin, we co-chair Inclusion, Access, and Success. And there are many ways that you could get involved with our committee. The first one that will be coming up is, well, not the first one, but rather every year at the annual conference, we host an outreach program at the host city. And so since we are hosting in Atlanta, we will have a project the Saturday before the conference. We are finalizing details on that. So I will make sure to share that with you all once we have more information. But if anyone is interested in volunteering that morning of Saturday, March 29th, feel free to reach out to me. Historically, we also host college admission workshops, and our goal is to have one in each of the states. And the chair for that is Sumita Malgal at the Westminster Schools. And because we are hosting in Atlanta, what we are doing this year is we're combining the efforts of the college admission workshop with the outreach program. So again, any questions, feel free to direct them to her or to me, and we'll be glad to answer those for you. Another way you could get involved is through our virtual discussion and book clubs. And so these cover a number of topics from your traditional book club to a discussion club around podcasts, TV shows, etc. If you'd like to get involved, I am linking the information in the chat, but you could also find this information through the What's Coming Wednesdays. If you all are reading those, you'll have information. I think there's one coming up soon that you could sign up for if you read this week's What's Coming Wednesday. And then lastly, we also host virtual college admission workshops. I want to thank those of you who have volunteered in the past to present. Those will come back in the spring. So if anyone is interested in presenting on a specific topic, or if you're passionate about just sharing your knowledge with students, these are geared towards students and parents. So anyone that's interested in volunteering, please feel free to reach out. And I'm going to also put our email address in the chat in case you all have any questions. But those are the updates from us, and thank you for inviting us.
The Members Relation Committee is chaired by 3 members, Alex Gonzalez, Crystal Livingston, and Brent Shropshire. Crystal Livingston is here today to give us updates for Members Relations.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I, like Iris, am on leave, but I'm actually caring for my father. So I'm just going to dip out right after this. But it's so good to be here today. And thank you all for coming and just inviting us. Thank you so much, Jennifer. So just to update everybody, our membership status, first of all, member relations, our committee, we are basically in charge of meeting the needs of our membership and also serving as a liaison between our members and the SACAC board. So right now, as of 10/22, our current membership is 2,317. Georgia is actually the second largest state full of members in SACAC. And then we have 718 FAM or free access membership. And so what free access membership is for those public school, high school counselors, we are really encouraging them to be a part of membership and get the support that they may need and also give back to our community. And so we allow them to apply for free access membership. And so if you know of public school counselors that may need some support, like SACAC, may need a family of support, or they would be great to give back to our organization, please encourage them to apply for that. We are encouraging, people to really take advantage of our info hub. If you have not gotten your password and your username for your info hub, every member has access to our SACAC information hub in addition to our website. And so it's more community based. And so we allow a lot of interaction and engagement on our info hub, So some of the things that you can receive from the info hub is information on our mentor program, our mentor hub meetings, our SIG meetings, which is our special interest groups, our membership milestones. So if you have any announcements, whether it's professional or personal, you, like Iris, you had a baby, you're getting married, maybe you want to report a divorce, I don't know. But any sort of milestone, you get a raise on your job, we want to celebrate and acknowledge you. And that's through our info hub, the membership milestones submission. Also member spotlight. So if you have any nominations for anyone, and we have tons of amazing people in Georgia that I've gotten a pleasure to know, but if you want to highlight anyone, member spotlights is a great way to do that. And then also to volunteer. We have tons of opportunities across the board to volunteer from our annual conference to our committees, our SIG leaderships, and that is the way through our info hub, in order to submit for volunteer signups.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Crystal. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having us. Take care. Have a great, wonderful day. Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. There is one more important, very important announcement that I failed to submit, and I do apologize for that. In addition to the counselor professional fund that Iris and Jackie mentioned earlier, specifically for the annual conference next year, we have a special scholarship or grant specifically for public school counselors, local public school counselors in the greater Atlanta area. So if you are a local public school, try saying this 3 times, a local public school, high school counselor in the greater Atlanta area and that covers the 13 counties of greater Atlanta. And you are looking to come to the annual conference in March, and you want to secure some funding for that, we are extending the application process until the 20th of this month. There's an application that you fill out, very short, and we are choosing for full scholarship for the entire conference. So again, that's if you're in the local Atlanta area, you're a public school counselor, and you are in need of funding for your registration for the annual conference. We will cover that if we choose you for that scholarship. In addition to that, if you need housing, if you want to come and stay at the hotel or whatever, you can apply for the CPF funding. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great, wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Crystal. We appreciate that and your updates. All right, the National College Fair Committee is chaired by Christine Grover. And while Christine couldn't be here today, we do have Sharice Ogle with us to give us an update on the Atlanta NACAC Fair. On the next slide, you'll see not only the Atlanta NACAC, but other fairs that are going to be held in the Southeastern region. Sharice, would you like to share a little bit more information about the Atlanta NACAC?
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. So selfish plug. Yes, I am the chair for the Atlanta National College Fair. We are here to obviously promote our fair a little bit more. As you can see, the dates are on the screen for Atlanta, Miami, as well as Charlotte. We are always seeking to get additional volunteers, especially for school counselors who are interested in volunteering at the college counseling booth, or just to be a body to be there present to help guide the students and direct them. I will go ahead and put a link to sign up to be a volunteer for the Atlanta one. The people who chair that part of our committee is Nancy Bean and Brent Shropshire, so you could always reach out to them directly. But I definitely are always looking for more people to come out and help and support us. If you want additional information about the chairs for Miami or Charlotte, you can contact me as well. I'm sure I can figure out exactly who they are and try to help you guys out with that. And I will go ahead and make sure that my information is in there as well. Thank you guys so much. Again, we really want to see people come out. Atlanta had about 4,500 students show up, so we really want to keep promoting it. Thanks a bunch.
Sharice.
The Professional Development Committee is co-chaired by Malika Lindsay, Allison North, and Maya Walker. Allison will share with us numerous ways to add depth and breadth to your career through the opportunities that we offer for professional development. And so we will start with Allison.
Actually, we're going to start real quick with Nayati Schuler to touch on the webinars, and then we will introduce Allison.
Yes.
Oh. Hello, everyone. So as noted, my name is Nayata Schuler. I serve as the chair for SACAC's webinar committee. And so I have a few updates to share with you all. The first is an overview of past webinars and upcoming webinars. So the webinar committee, we hosted a number of webinars beginning January 2024 through the end of the summer. So they included a webinar that served as a kickoff for the conference, things to know before you go. We also hosted a FAFSA state and national trends webinar in partnership with the National College Attainment Network. A webinar centered around holding realistic conversations about financial aid and paying for college. And then we also hosted a dry run kickoff webinar as well. So more webinars to come. For those of you who have not already explored this webinar as well. We are hosting a webinar next Wednesday, the 20th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, centered around college financial planning, strategies, and resources for guiding families. The intended audience for that webinar will include school counselors, community-based organizations, and college consultants as well. We will also be hosting an AI in college admissions webinar in December. It is currently scheduled for December 10th, and so more information will be coming out about that as well. So I do want to also share that there is a survey forthcoming. Over the fall, the webinars committee has discussed our collective interest and really continuing to develop webinars that not only speak to opportunities for professional development for SACAC members, but also furthering webinars to serve as opportunities to encourage and cultivate community and continuous dialogue among all sides of the desk throughout the year, even before and beyond the conference each year. And so with this in mind, we will be coordinating a survey because we want to hear from SACAC members about your thoughts on webinar efforts moving forward. And so we encourage you to be on the lookout for that survey as well. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to highlight our committee. There are 7 members of the committee, 8 including myself. 2 of them are actually here today. So we have Brian Cooper. We also have Jay Deming on the committee, Deidre Bold with Holy Innocents Episcopal School, Christine Hall, working in college consulting, Stephanie Hospodar, Melissa Kataka, Sheena Ramirez. They are also part of the webinar committee, and they work on the college admission side as well. And then last but not least, I do want to share that if you all have any questions about SACAC webinars, if you have ideas surrounding webinar topics or potential presenters, or if you yourself would like to participate in a webinar as a presenter or panelist, we would absolutely love your partnership as well. So for any questions, any ideas you have, feel free to email the webinar committee, and the email is listed here, webinars@sacac.org. Thank you.
Okay, now we have Allison North here to share some updates for professional development. Allison?
Yep, Zoom, you know, still haven't figured out the technology, right? 4 years in. Good morning, everyone. My name is Allison North. I'm located here in Atlanta, regionally based for George Washington University. Want to shout out, I do serve alongside Malika Lindsay and the incomparable Maya Walker, who I'm sure you all know, who are my wonderful co-chairs. And definitely want to thank Nyada Schuler for essentially revitalizing the webinars committee and bringing some webinars to life for our membership. So we're super excited about where webinars are heading, and I hope that you all will join us on some of those webinar calls in the future. So yes, right now we do have SACAC Leads we are looking for all the volunteers for SACAC Leads right now. So if you are interested in becoming a leader in SACAC or want to learn more of how to get more involved, see yourself as possibly serving on board in the future, right now we are looking for those future leaders in our membership. So if you want to participate, we have our participation open. If you want to serve as faculty, if you've been a previous participant and you now want to give back to SACAC Leads, you can apply to be faculty. And we are also looking for a co-chair right now for SACAC Leads. So if you have served as faculty or been a part of the cohort, please put those applications in. I believe the application deadline is actually November 30th, but I can check on that. If you have questions, please reach out to us and we would be happy to share that information with you. Is there another slide?
Yes, computer's frozen. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Awesome. And of course, as always, our amazing programming we do have coming up. So summer seminar, we received an amazing bid and we are so excited to have kind of this co-bid, co-host situation with Belmont University and Vanderbilt University this coming summer. So if you are new to the college counseling side, if you foresee yourself switching to that side, I definitely encourage you to come join us in Nashville this summer. It is going to be an fantastic time. We have some wonderful co-chairs who are planning some great programming for you all. We also have a new host for Dry Run. We're going to be in Orlando, Florida this coming year at Rollins College. So if you have new admissions counselors in your office, I definitely encourage you to send them to Dry Run. And our faculty and participation applications will be opening up probably at the end of the new year or end of this year, beginning of the new year for both of these. And then, of course, we do have Sweet Tea Tour. So we have decided, our amazing co-chairs have put together an amazing route for you all. It is actually going to be in South Florida, which we're so excited about. We haven't been in South Florida in quite some time. So they are in the process of putting that route together. So if you are a Georgia-based counselor and you want to see some of South Florida, definitely hop on that as soon as that registration opens. This is probably our program that fills the fastest. So I do encourage you, once that registration opens, grab your spot. And then, of course, annual conference is coming up. Someone else is probably on the call to discuss that, but it is one of the most amazing professional development opportunities. So come see us. We're going to be in Atlanta this year.
Alex, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'll do that over. So our theme this year for the SACAC conference is Embrace the Moment, Inspire, Inform, and Impact. We're really lucky this year to have the SACAC conference in our backyard in Atlanta. So we hope that all of our colleagues around the Georgia area can attend this year. Again, please check out the various links that have been pasted in the chat for different funding opportunities, different volunteer opportunities relating to the SACAC conference. And also check your email, because weekly we get updates about the conference, about registration, about how to get involved, how to volunteer, and how to access some of those grants. So keep an eye out for those, and we hope to see you all in Atlanta in late March. All right, so while we've covered a lot of information with you today from current admission trends and updates within our field and our state, we do have a few more pieces of information to share before we open the floor for any updates and questions. So first off, I'd like to introduce Kaylee Havens, who will give us an update on the Georgia Drive-In Workshop. Kaylee?
Hi guys, are you able to hear me, Alex?
Yep.
Awesome, thanks. So our 2024 drive-in workshop was hosted on the Alpharetta campus of Gwinnett Technical College. We had about 30 to 40 attendees who were able to participate, and a lot of you guys submitted sessions. We were very thankful. So we had an admissions case study, a transfer admissions session, financial aid review, mental health partnership among college applicants with college admissions counselors, and we brought in Princeton Review for some standardized testing updates. This year, we're really excited to be hosting the first ever virtual Georgia Drive-In Workshop. It'll be on Wednesday, February 26th, and we want to thank everyone for submitting a session proposal. We just met with SACAC board over this, and actually Georgia got a shout out for having the most session proposals, so thank you guys. And you should be hearing from either Amy Short or I within the next few weeks to let you know if your session was selected. Please do not be upset if you were not selected. Again, we had so many, and that is very, very new. So we're overly thankful, and there were some great ones. So maybe you can submit it for the SACAC conference or NACAC conference or for future drive-in workshops. But we really hope to have you guys here. The time is pending 1 to 3 p.m. based on my co-chair and I's availability. So when the save the date comes out, it will have the set time, but it's virtual on February 26th, and we hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaylee. All right, last but not least, we just wanted to remind you about the Info Hub. It's a great place to find event recordings. So this event will be recorded and pasted on there. Job listings, Southern Scope blog, volunteer opportunities, and other resources. This new website feature is great for seeing all of our events and programming in one central spot. And one last reminder, remember to renew your membership each year. As we mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, $45 per person is the annual fee. and public high school and CBOs have free access membership. SACAC membership starts September 1st and runs until August 31st. So remember, if you are not currently or don't have a current membership, you can do that by scanning the QR code. Now we'd like to open the floor for any additional updates and questions before we sign off for today. So if you have any updates or questions, feel free to unmute your mic, or you guys can comment in the chat box and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
And before we do, hey everyone, I'm Darren Morgan, one of the SAI co-chairs. I just wanted to hop on and really say thank you to Alex and Ebony for putting together a great meeting. Truly loved all the information from Dr. Boyce to all the committee updates. It was truly a phenomenal meeting, and thank you to the almost 60 people that took time out of their day to join this call. Really appreciate it. I'm going to add a couple more links to the chat, so sorry about that. But so for one, we do have the Council Participation Fund. We've already talked about that. The deadline is December 3rd, so it's coming up quickly. Please feel free to, if you're interested, fill out that link and request funding from SACAC to pay for travel, food, conference expenses for the March 30th to March 31st conference. We'll also put the price for the conference in the chat, as well as links to sign up. And also, I'll be remiss if I didn't shout out all of the board members, past and present, that's on the call. From Crystal, so many, I took notes, but Crystal, Allison, Juan, Ebony, Maya, Iris, Jade, and everyone else. Sorry if I forgot y'all, but it's truly a lot. And also, thank you to past President Nancy Bean for hopping on as well. So really appreciate Georgia for coming in and really representing today. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren. Also, speaking of Nancy, she did put a comment in the chat about signing up to help with the counseling center at the January 26th SACAC Fair at the Georgia International Convention Center. Sharice talked about that a little bit earlier, but we would love to have as many volunteers as possible. That's what makes our NACACs run so well. So please feel free to volunteer. And that is all that we have today.
Actually, can I add something real quick?
Oh,
Sorry about
absolutely.
that. I was going to say, for anyone that will be interested in volunteering for the outreach program, you should be able to indicate that in the registration form for the conference, and so that will be there. And also, if anyone, as Darren mentioned, there are a number of board members here, well, past and present. So if anyone is interested in what board member work looks like, as nominations will come up, I'm gonna put my email in the chat. So feel free to reach out with any questions. This is my last year on the board, so happy to answer what my work for the last 2 years look like. So please feel free to reach out if anyone has questions about that.
Well, thank you all again for attending our meeting. And if there are no more questions, feel free to email me and Alex if you do have any questions about anything we discussed here. We can kind of point you in the right direction and get you to the head in charge for whatever the question you have. But if you don't have any other questions, thank you for attending. And you can follow SACAC, of course, on any of our social medias, and be sure to look out into the info hub as well. Is that a new resource that we have, and everything is right there. But thank you so much.
We're going to stay on for just a couple more minutes. So if you have any lingering questions, feel free to ask or put them in the chat. But thank you guys for coming. And it's 11, so we did it in an hour. Go team. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Awesome. I'm just going to keep my eye on the chat for a minute, just in case. And there were a lot of really great links in there. So if anybody wants to open those and save them.
Excellent job, Ebony and Alex. This is Ashley.
Thank you. Hey, Ashley.
Hi. All right. Take good care, folks.
Okay.
Bye. Aw. Jade. Aw.
This was my first SAI meeting, and I'm very, very much happy that I came.
Brian.
Yeah.
Wait, why was this your first?
Yeah.
Oh, because you weren't in Georgia before.
Yeah, you just
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
welcome to Georgia.
I was kind of required to come, right?
Yeah.
You
Okay.
kinda-
I would have come if I wasn't
Can y'all stop the
required.
recording real quick?
Oh, sorry.